the recent dietary guidelines that have just been published by the government, which is really an abomination because it's a step back into the dark ages of the 1950s when meat and dairy were two major food groups. So this new recommendation, while they're trying to get rid of processed food and additives and extra sugar, which I applaud them for, the idea that they're trying to tout as a priority red meat and high fat dairy products is really an abomination. And by the way, people need to know that's not what the original committee came up with. The original Dietary Advisory Committee, the DGAC, the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, actually came up with a remarkable plant-based recommendation. In fact, they recommended beans and lentils and whole grains and fruits and vegetables to be the priority of the diet. But what happened was they ended up having a secondary set of committees that were kind of like peer review. And unfortunately, in those committees, a majority of some of those members had links to the meat and dairy industry. So it modified the final recommendations to the Health and Human Services organization that actually publishes the guideline. So these people had connection with the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, the National Dairy Council, the American Pork Board. And so they actually took the recommendations from this incredible scientific committee that was recommending mostly plant use, and they modified those recommendations that then became the final guidelines. And that to me was abominable. That's reprehensible because those guidelines are going into a lot of government programs that are going to be feeding children and infants. And so you're laying the groundwork again now with high saturated fat, high animal-based foods that's only going to feed the pathologies that are so common as they exist now: heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, cancers of various kinds. So that's one of the confusions. And I'd love our audience to know that the real guidelines that were recommended were incredibly plant-based and were very much singling out the use of fruits, vegetables, high fiber, whole grains, and lentils and beans and all of those things. That's not what kind of made it to the final table, however. Human beings are not carnivorous. We're frugivore herbivores by nature. And if we try to live as carnivores, we don't survive. Carnivores have the lowest, shortest lifespans, all of them. I tell people, if you want to prove to me that you're a carnivore, you need to do one thing. You need to show me that you can run in full stride, jump on the back of a zebra, and rip out a piece of its ass with your front teeth. When you can do that, you'll convince me that you're a carnivore. Until then, you won't. Well, and not only that, we lack a major enzyme system that's devastating that carnivores have, which is uricase. And when you don't have uricase, uric acid builds up, and it's a major damaging component for joints across the board. And all carnivores have uricase. We don't. We're not carnivores. We're just not.
Yeah, well, but that same example you gave, I mean, I see these tribes in the Amazon that have no communication and are being discovered. And the majority of their diet, with all the amazing fruits they have available, the majority of their diet it might be monkey or some other animal. And how are they getting it? They're not chasing down the monkey. They got these weapons that they've created. And yes, I hear what you're saying. It's not their natural. They don't need anything to eat it, but we're not, a lot of people cut open fruits with a knife, or
Look,
coconut.
Rod, you have to understand that there are at least 6 areas on planet Earth right now, because I did this article when I did a whole article on the paleo diet, that are living as they did in Paleolithic times. And as it turns out, animal products are the smallest part of their diet. You have to understand that. They are still eating primarily fruits, whatever they can gather. Because when people go out on the hunt, these very primitive tribes, most of the time you come home empty-handed. It's not easy to do. So you're still stuck with eating whatever everybody's gathered. So as it turns out, the amount of animal product in the diet is actually the smallest part of the diet of these indigenous communities that still exist on the planet Earth, like in Paleolithic times. So true paleo diets are not meat-based, they're plant-based.
Good point. Good point.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the raw life health. Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show.